Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name's Anthony Beardsall. Welcome to this second in our series of webinars that we're doing, which are uncovering some of the secrets of NLP, some of the secrets of coaching. And we've got some really great processes for you to go through today. So the first webinar that we did was called What is NLP? And thanks ever so much for your comments and your feedback with regard to that particular webinar. It's done really well on YouTube, and it's still available on YouTube actually if you want to go back and have a look at that. And I'm just like you, it's not too long ago now that I was on the other side of this video camera, on the other side of this screen, and I was watching with excitement and curiosity and looking at as many videos and webinars as I possibly could to gather all of my learning together. I read hundreds, if not thousands, of books to gather the knowledge that I've got today. And NLP is all about finding some sort of skill that you want, some sort of skill that you'd like to have for yourself, finding somebody who's excellent at it, trying that skill out, doing it, and getting good at it yourself, and then teaching other people how to do it. That's what NLP is all about. And so if at any stage during these webinars you're kind of looking at the screen and you're watching things and you're thinking, I'd love to do that, but I'm not sure if I can, then believe you me, you absolutely can. You're just like me. So in this particular webinar, we're going to be talking about how to get NLP working for you, So we're going to take the knowledge of NLP to the next level during this particular webinar. There's no particular need for any prior knowledge of NLP to get the full benefit from this webinar, and I'm hoping to deliver some really great value to you over the next period of time. Now, it's likely to be about 40 minutes, this webinar, something like that. And I welcome you to ask any questions, make any comments, and you can use the comment sections on the various web pages in order to do that if that's something that you want to do. So I'd love you to join in. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about is very thought-provoking, and no doubt at all that you'll have some questions, so go ahead and ask them and use the comments section, which is generally at the bottom underneath the video on the web page you're on. So we're streaming live at the moment to the Excellence Assured website, excellenceassured.com. We're on Google+, we're using that as the website, the webinar platform, Google+. So if you're using Google+, you can use the Q&A app if you're logged into Google+ to ask any questions. And we're on YouTube as well. And obviously there are comment sections there to ask any questions there. Now, if you're watching this webinar and you're watching it as a recorded event, then just treat it as live. I'd like you to do that. Just treat it as live. And if any questions spring to mind, ask them using the comment sections. And I'll occasionally pop back and answer any questions that we've got. So I'll get back to you. Right. So how can NLP help me? So what do I mean by that? How can we get NLP working for us? And NLP is a series of processes and techniques that we can use in order to bring about change for ourselves and for other people as well. And you don't always get what you want out of life. Life doesn't always turn out exactly the way that you want it. And so NLP provides us with a number of techniques and processes that we can use to help smooth out some of the bumps in life. And so we're going to do a couple of exercises today. You're going to do a couple of exercises today, and I'm going to talk you through these exercises that are going to show you how to create some kind of change in your life. And you can use these processes as well with other people. Now, I'm going to be coaching you through these processes. I'm going to coach you through the techniques in this video. And NLP is all about coaching, isn't it? In fact, coaching also is all about NLP. A good NLP practitioner will be able to coach somebody to change their life so that they can get it the way that they want it. And most coaches are either NLP practitioners or they're NLP master practitioners. And if they're not, then they're probably using NLP accidentally. Now, we run NLP training courses online. We run them live in the UK, and our NLP training courses, which are certification training courses, are designed to enable you to use NLP with a purpose and on purpose, so that you get the results that you want out of life and you're able to help other people as well. So it's all about coaching. And we're going to look at one particular value thing that we can do to help you create change in your life and add value to your life today. We're going to look at how to change, how to eliminate a bad habit, and how you can do that with other people. We're going to give you a process for that. So I'm really excited to be able to do that with you today. Now, NLP is a do with process. Do with process. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's do with rather than do to. So it's a coaching process. And what furthermore about that, what I mean by that is that, you know, sometimes people come and see me for NLP or for coaching, and they'll say to me, I've got this problem, it's such and such, and, you know, I don't know what to do about it. I need you to do something. I need you to do some NLP. So there you go. Just do it to me. And the thing is that NLP doesn't really work like that. It's, as I say, it's a do with process, because if the person just sort of sits back and says, right, you do all the work, Anthony, and so I do all the work and we do some NLP, and then it may work and it may not work. And the thing is that we need to take responsibility for our own results in life. We need to have some responsibility for our own results. And society doesn't, you know, the way we're brought up doesn't actually teach us that that is the case. You know, in the UK and England, we've got the National Health Service, we've got the welfare state. So if we become ill or we can't work and we can't earn money, then we're provided for. And subliminally, that sends us questionable messages, really. It kind of says to us deep down, it says, well, you know, you can rely on somebody outside of yourself and you'll be okay. It's comforting. However, it's not the best way for us to learn, because we learn that we've got no control, you know. We've got no control over our health and also over our mental health. You know, these days there are pills that you can take to make you happy, to make you less stressed, to calm you down and help you relax. And that tells us subconsciously and unconsciously, it tells us, you know, you don't need to bother about that, doing that yourself. You can rely on other things, external influences, which is not a great message. We learn that we've got no control over our own mental health, over our own thought processes. And that's not right. We absolutely do. And NLP provides us with a series of processes that we can use to get that control back. If I was to say to somebody, I want you to go up to somebody and say, I want you to make me happy. I want you to make me happy. Now, can they do that? I don't think they can really, can they? They can't really make me happy. They can make me laugh. But in order to be happy, I need to decide that I'm going to be happy. So I need to be in control of that. And I am. Sometimes I need somebody to shine a light and point me in the right direction to tell me how I can do it. But I need to be in control of that. If I was to say to somebody, we're going to do an NLP exercise now, and I want you to close your eyes and I want you to think of a time in the past when you were really happy. Think of a time in the past when you were really happy and close your eyes. Now, if I was to say that, then whose responsibility is it to close their eyes? And whose responsibility is it to think of a time in the past when they were really happy? Well, it's not mine, is it? It's their responsibility. They have to do that part of the process. I can guide them, and they need to do that part of the process. And that's why NLP is, and why I describe NLP as a do with process. Okay, so now what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to bring up our presentation on screen. So I'll just do that for us now. And we're going to talk about habits. We're going to talk about breaking habits. Okay, so Let me just bring this up. We're going to talk about how habits, first of all, are formed. And NLP provides us with a number of techniques and processes that we can use in order to break habits. And here's one of them. So, as an introduction to that, I just want you to think about now, so that you get an idea as to how habits are formed. I want you to think about something in your life that you're really good at, or something that you're good at in your life. Think of something that you're good at in your life. Have you got something? Great. So as you think about that thing, just notice, have you always been good at it? Have you always been good at that thing? I would guess that you probably haven't always been good at it. And it probably involves a number of quite complex skills that you've acquired over a period of time. You've decided that you want to do that thing and do it well. And you've acquired a number of skills over that period of time. And as you think about the skills that are involved to do that thing, just notice, when you do those skills, do you actually have to think about what you're doing, or is it an automatic process for you now? Can you do it without thinking? I would think that if you're really good at it and you've been good at it for a period of time, that most of the actions that are involved with actually doing this habit or doing this thing are unconscious for you, and you do them on autopilot. And this is the way habits are formed, and this applies to good habits and it applies to bad habits as well. They're formed in the same way. They're generally formed by repeating a behavior and for it to become unconscious, and it becomes unconscious, so the habit actually takes place automatically, which is why it becomes difficult or tricky to actually break the habit. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break a habit. So just think about this. Think about getting up out of a chair and walking. Now, you're probably quite good at doing that by now. That's just a guess, but I would think that you probably are. And it's quite a complex skill actually doing that. I mean, putting your hands in the right place to push yourself up out of the chair, putting your legs in the right place, your feet in the right place, managing your balance there, how to hold your head, what to concentrate on. It's a really complex process that we go through, but you're able to do that really convincingly now. That hasn't always been the case. So imagine when you first learned to walk, you fell over a few times. But now you're able to pick yourself up and you're able to coordinate your body, coordinate your thought processes. So it's a simple process of putting one leg in front of the other. You don't have to think about how to move your arms, staying upright. These are complex processes and complex skills that are involved in walking, and we take it for granted, don't we? We take it for granted, and it's so every single movement. We're calculating in our mind, in our unconscious, subconscious mind. We're calculating how far our foot is off the ground every single millisecond to make sure that we land and we place our foot in the right place so that we don't fall over. Complex skill that we've developed over time, and this is generally how habits are formed. So I'd imagine that one day you were in your cot or you were lying on the floor and you saw somebody walking. This is generally how habits form. You see somebody with a skill that you want, looks exciting for you, and you thought, well, crikey, I don't want to be lying here in the cot. It looks much more exciting to be up and about and looking at things from a different perspective higher up. So I want to be able to stand up and walk. And so you developed an urge to grow, to change. You developed an urge to have a habit, which was walking, standing up and walking. And this is the beginning of a habit. It normally starts with an urge. So you tried it out. You got up out of your cot. You pushed yourself up and you fell over straight away, probably. In fact, at first, you probably couldn't push yourself up. But eventually, you make some mistakes. You practice, you fall over. You begin to learn to crawl, and you Gradually, skill by minute skill, you build this practice and you get better and better and better until you're able to actually walk, and you can do it. And you need to concentrate really hard at first in order to walk. Probably a bit like if you're able to drive, learning to drive. But now you can do it without thinking. You don't even have to do it. Have to think about it anymore. And this is how habits develop. They become unconscious and they become hard to break. They become part of you. You have beliefs and values associated with your habits that are entrenched in deep down within you and make your habits difficult and tricky to break. But it is possible, and I'm going to show you how now. So a habit is formed normally by a stimulus, some kind of stimulus. The stimulus is either internal or it's external. If there's an external stimulus for your habit, then you'll take the stimulus in, the information associated with the stimulus, you'll take in through your senses of sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. You take the information in and it goes into, and it bypasses your unconscious mind. Your conscious mind, sorry, it bypasses your conscious mind, goes straight into your unconscious mind. If this stimulus is internal, then it'll come as part, it'll form a thought, and your thought will be processed internally. So this process happens in the same way. The information associated with an internal or an external stimulus comes in and it bypasses your conscious thoughts and goes straight into your unconscious mind, where it's processed. So it goes through a mind filtering process in your unconscious mind, and the information's filtered via your values, your beliefs, your decisions, your memories, and your language. So yes, past decisions and past memories that you have will influence the way that you process a stimulus or an urge to do something. So, and that's how the urge is actually created, because you've had the stimulus in the past, you made the decision in the past that you'd do a behavior as a result of the stimulus, and so the pattern repeats without you being consciously able to get involved and make an intervention and change that particular thing. And that's how habits form. So after the information's filtered in our unconscious mind, we get a conscious representation of that information, which comes in the form of an internal representation or an internal representation of the information we're receiving. That's intimately coupled with our state of mind and our physiology. So what I mean by that is that the stimulus that's processed in our unconscious mind comes to us, forms some kind of pictures or feelings, which as a result of those create a mood or a state of mind for us, put us in a certain state of mind. And as far as physiology is concerned, our facial expressions might tell a tale of how we're thinking, and it might tell a tale of our mood. All of these things are linked together. So for example, if you're in a poor state of mind, your facial expressions, your body language isn't going to be positive, and people are going to realize that you're not in a great state of mind. And as a result of that as well, you're going to be getting poor internal representations or negative internal representations. If you're in a good state of mind, then you'll look bright and upbeat, and also your thoughts are more likely to be positive. This has an impact on your behavior, because your behavior will result from the internal representations that you're getting. And you'll either get good or bad behavior, generally dependent on your state of mind and how you're processing the information that you're receiving via your internal representations. Now, these internal representations come in the form of pictures, sounds, feelings, self-talk, tastes and smells, and we get all of these things in our mind's eye. These are our thoughts, aren't they? You can probably recall, maybe if you closed your eyes now, you'd be able to get a picture in your mind of this particular screen, for example, or the word pictures in the top left-hand corner there. Internal representations are our internal representation of the information we're receiving. It's how we're experiencing the world, how we know we're experiencing information. And these are really, really vital in terms of managing our experiences and managing our habits. And these are the things that we're going to be focusing on today. So we're able to control and manipulate these things in our own brains, in our own minds, to get more of what we want in life and less of what we don't want. Does that sound good? Great. So I'll go straight on. So a habit is formed by a stimulus and ends up in a behavior. And there are generally not just one internal representation. There are normally a series of internal representations that take place in our minds that lead to the behavior. And they're triggered by this first internal representation. The one on the left-hand side triggers the other internal representations. And that's an automatic process that takes place and leads to our behavior we don't want. Now, it's normally a habit is started by an urge, and the urge will result in an internal representation for you. So let's just have a look at this then. So the stimulus results in a behavior. There's a series of internal representations, and these representations are anchored into our system. They're ground or tattooed, if you like, into our brain system. And anchoring is an NLP term. It's not uniquely NLP, but there's a process called anchoring, which is fantastic in NLP. And this comes from the likes of Twitmeyer and Pavlov, names you might recognize. Twitmeyer was the guy who was a doctor who tested, he was the knee-jerk reaction guy. So he would use a rubber hammer to tap people his patients on the leg, and he noticed that the leg jerked as a result of them being tapped on the knee. And then he realized that after he'd done that several times, if he feigned or pretended to tap them on the knee, the leg would still move. And he realized that that was an automatic process that was taking place as a result of a stimulus being applied. Pavlov was the chap who enticed some dogs to salivate by ringing a bell and providing them with a steak, and then he realized that he could just ring the bell and they'd salivate without actually seeing the steaks. Again, that's anchoring, and this is how habits develop and how they're ground into our system and ingrained into our lives. They're anchored in there, and so in order to break them, we need to change these anchors, change the internal representations, and we get a different behavior. And it's this first internal representation that we need to change. If we can change that, then it runs a different process internally. We get different internal representations, and we get our desired outcome rather than our problem behavior. Sound good? Great. So it's all about internal representations, and they can be sounds, feelings, self-talk, tastes, and smells. And we're going to focus mainly today on the pictures that we create in our mind's eye, because these are the ones that most people can recognize that they get and get easily. And so as a result, they tend to be the easiest thing to work with from a coaching point of view. All right. So what I want you to do is I just want you to bring to mind, and you can close your eyes if you want to do this. Bring to mind an apple, if you would, please. So bring to mind an apple. So you've got picture. Have you got a picture now of an apple in your mind's eye? Good. And is it red or is it green? Red or green? Interesting. Notice that if it's red, you can actually picture a green apple in your mind's eye. And if it's green, you could picture a red apple in your mind's eye. So by doing that, you've actually changed the internal representation that you have in your mind's eye. You've changed it from red to green or green to red. And you did that all of your own accord. You did that. And notice that probably the one that you imagined first of all was the one that you preferred eating. So if you prefer eating juicy red apples, then you probably pictured a red apple. If you prefer green apples or yellow apples, you probably pictured one of those. And so notice how when you change the representation, and you can open your eyes, by the way, now, thank you. Notice how when you think about a different apple, different coloured apple, how it changes your feelings inside, how you may be more enticed and feel more of an urge to actually go ahead and eat an apple if you think of the apple and the colour of apple, shape of apple that you'd prefer eating. Okay, so if you loved red apples and you thought of a juicy, shiny red apple, you hold it in your hand, you sniff it and smell that lovely appley smell, and you bite into it. If you think of all these things and imagine yourself doing that, then the urge to go ahead and eat an apple becomes stronger and stronger. If let's say you didn't like green apples and you imagined biting into a green apple, then that could be disgusting for you and really mean that you don't want to eat an apple. So by manipulating and deciding to change the representations, the pictures, the sounds, the feelings, the tastes, the smells that we've got internally, we can actually change our experience. We can change our experience, and we provide ourselves, therefore, with different anchors. Another example for you here. So think of somebody now. Just bring to mind, if you would, for me, somebody now that you like. Bring to mind somebody that you like. Thank you. As you picture them, notice how thinking about them makes you feel. You can possibly hear them speaking. If I shut up for a minute, you'd hear them speaking. Notice how it makes you feel. Okay, clear that screen then, thank you. And think now about somebody that you dislike or like less. Somebody that you like less. Bring them to mind. Bring a picture of them to mind. And as you think about them again, notice how that makes you feel. Notice how that's different from when you pictured somebody that you like. Notice if the picture is in a different place in your mind's eye, if it's a different shape, if it's a different size, because often it is. And again, just notice how that makes you feel when you think of that person. Thanks. Now clear the screen. Thank you very much. Take a little breath. Thank you. So you can see that by changing the internal representation that we get, changing the internal representation that presents us with an urge to go ahead and do something, we can then change the other series of internal representations and get the outcome that we want rather than a problem behavior. And that's what we're going to concentrate on today. So here is a process. I'm going to talk you through a process that we can use in order to change a bad habit. And in order to find the trigger, this is the most important thing. With any habit, there's a trigger. This trigger presents us with an urge to do the habit, and then the habit runs automatically and on autopilot after that. So in order to find if you're a coach, to help somebody find the trigger, and you can do this for yourself as well, to find the triggers for your own bad habits. So if you think perhaps you've got a bad habit and you'd like to change it, if you think about these questions in relation to that, on the last occasion you did the habit, you carried it out, when was it in your thinking that you knew that you had to do the habit? So when was it that you knew that you had to do the habit? That could provide you with the answer to what is the trigger. Or what was the very first thing that happened so that you knew that you had to do it? What was the very first thing that happened so that you knew that you had to do it? And is there a picture that you can get in your mind for that particular thing? Is there a picture that you associate with that? There will be a picture, and we're going to use that picture. And that's how you find the trigger for the habit. You get to right at the very start of the habit. If you come in the middle and the habit and and the process, the automatic pilot process is already running, then the chances are that the bad habit will still take place, even if you change the internal representation. You need to get to the beginning, to the urge and to the trigger. That's what we're going to do. So notice that you can change the internal representations. You can change the picture that you've got in your mind's eye. You can change the colors of it, the contours of the outside of it. You can change the size of it. You can change the content of it to make it appear different to you and give you a different experience. You can change the position of it in your mind's eye. And doing this is something called a submodalities process in NLP, which is there are several fantastic exercises that you can use to produce change using this particular type of process. So here's one. So this is a habit management tool that we're talking about, a habit management and urge management tool. You can use it for yourself, and we're going to do an exercise shortly. But I want to give you some examples first. So I was working with somebody once. I was coaching somebody who had a problem overeating chocolate. And so what I said was, I want to explore this habit of overeating chocolate with you. I want to explore it, and I want to find out what's creating the urge to overeat chocolate with you. I want to find what the trigger is for overeating chocolate so that we can change that particular habit. This lady's name, let's call her Sally. So Sally I asked her to think, I said, and I used the questions. Last time that you did this particular habit, when was it that you knew that you had to overeat chocolate? And what was the very first thing that happened in your mind's eye when you thought, I know, I've got to eat some chocolate? What was the very first thing that happened so that you knew that you had to eat that chocolate? And she said, I thought actually about a bar of chocolate in its wrapper. That's what I do. I picture a bar of chocolate, and then I know that I'm going to eat some chocolate. And I said, okay, fine. So what I want you to do is I just want you to imagine a scale of +10 to -10. +10 being, right, give me that chocolate, I've got to eat it now. And -10 on the scale being, gosh, I just couldn't eat. Oh, the thought of eating chocolate's just disgusting. 0 on the scale being, I can take it or leave it. I'm not that bothered. Where would you say that you are thinking about, if you bring that bar of chocolate to mind now in its wrapper, where would you think that you are on that scale? And she said, I could tell that she was picturing this, and she said, well, I'm about 4 on the scale. About +4 on the scale. I really want some chocolate right now, but I don't have to have it, not at this stage. I said, okay, great. So what would happen? What would have to happen in order to get to +7 on the scale? What would you have to do in your mind? What would you have to imagine in order to get to +7 on the scale? And she said, well, I'd have to take the wrapper off. And I can almost smell the chocolate now, and that's put it at +7. I said, all right, great. So what would have to happen for it to go to +10? So you knew that you just had to eat that chocolate and you got to have it now. And I could see she was kind of wide-eyed at this stage. And she said, well, what I'd need to do is I'd need to hold it. I'd need to bring it up to my nose and sniff it and imagine biting into it and the lovely taste of that chocolate sliding down my throat. And oh yes, and I could tell at this stage she'd got a full internal representation going on. She'd got pictures, feelings, smells and tastes. Oh, she was loving it. And that's what you need to do in order to get to really high on the scale. I've got to have it now, a full internal representation of what you don't want, actually. And that's generally the process that you go through in building a habit. So she's got to have it right now. So I said, okay, so just clear the screen there in your mind's eye, and and take a sip of water. You're not going to have some chocolate right now. So what would you have to do in order to bring the desire for chocolate down to a zero? What would you have to do with this picture that you've got? And she sat there for a little while and she said, well, probably need to just put it on a table. So put it down, move it away from me and put it on a table. And that would take it to a zero. I could take it or leave it if it was there and I couldn't smell it. And she said, if I couldn't smell it. And I thought, all right, so smell is quite important to her. Interesting. So anyway, so she did that. And I said, okay, what about -5? In order to take it to -5, what would you have to do? And she said, well, okay, so I can't really think of doing this. I can't really think of it being unattractive to me at this stage. And I said, well, yeah, I know that you can't, but if you could, what would you have to do in your mind's eye? She sat there looking puzzled for a little while. And then she said, okay, well, what I'd have to do is I'd have to actually mix it with some tuna. I'd have to mix the chocolate with some tuna and imagine it being mixed with tuna. Oh, that's horrible. Absolutely disgusting. I can imagine doing it. And I could see that she was pulling a face, so she was imagining it. And again, smells, I could tell that smell was a big driver for her there. So she could smell the tuna mixed with the chocolate and almost making a retch. So I said, okay, so what would you have to do with this picture in your mind's eye in order to take it to a -10? And she said, okay, so probably what I'd have to do is I'd have to imagine it making me really ill, and the fact that eating it would give me a heart attack, and that would take me down to -10. And as she said that, I could tell she'd pictured it. Her face was just appalled at the thought of eating the chocolate, just appalled. She went white, and I thought, right, okay. So I said, okay, thanks ever so much. Just clear the screen there and take a sip of water and take a deep breath. Have a quick walk around the room. And so she did that. And we both knew at that stage, we both knew exactly what she had to do in her mind's eye next time she got the urge to eat some chocolate. So next time she noticed the trigger, and we talked through this, next time she gets the trigger, got the trigger for her bar of chocolate, she knew that she could then think of this image of the chocolate being mixed with tuna and making her ill and giving her a heart attack, and that there's absolutely no way that she could eat chocolate after thinking that. So she had a technique now to overcome and to change her chocolate eating and overeating chocolate habit. So this is how we break habits. Now, doing this exercise once is going to give you the tools, and so that you know what you need to do to break the habit. And it may be that you can use these tools straight away and never do the thing again. And it may also be that it takes some repetition and some practice for you to notice the trigger and change the picture in your mind's eye. So you can rehearse this before the urge comes to you and leaves you befuddled and confused, and before you go ahead and do that behavior again, you can now practice, and you've got a process here that you can use in order to repeat and rehearse in your mind's eye, so that you, rather than doing the habit, that you picture this other thing that's really going to turn you off and put you on a scale of -10 so that you don't do the habit. So let's just have a quick look through this process again. So we're concentrating on changing the trigger, the internal representation at the beginning of the habit, so that we get a desired outcome, which is breaking the habit. Okay, so then we find out what the picture is for the habit. So what is the picture for the trigger, the urge? When was it that you knew that you had to do such and such bad habit? Or what was the very first thing that happened the last time that you did it, so that you knew that you had to do it? The trigger, find the trigger. And then we get a picture in our mind's eye of, when we get this trigger, what is it? What is it, and where does it put us on this scale? We then go up the scale, we apply sounds, feelings, smells and tastes to this internal representation to make it more powerful for us and make the compulsion, the urge to go ahead and do it, greater. We then reduce the internal representations. We maybe create a different picture that means that we can take it or leave it. We're not bothered. We change the picture again and the internal representations again to take it down to a -5. Not going to do it. Not going to do this behavior, this habit at this stage. And then a -10. And at -10, it's the thought of doing the habit is absolutely disgusting and appalling for you, and you just couldn't even contemplate doing it. And once you've got that particular picture, you know what you need to do in future in order to break the habit, and you can do that right away now. Okay, so before we go ahead and do an exercise and you get to experience this, just give you another example. I used to smoke, and when I smoked, I was able to overcome it using this particular technique. So I asked myself, I thought, last time I had a cigarette, when was it that I knew that I had to smoke? What was the very first thing that happened in my mind internally so that I knew that I had to smoke? And I thought, well, okay, with me, it was I pictured a cigarette. I pictured me holding a cigarette without lighting it, and I sniffed it, and it put me at about a +5. I then, without actually doing anything else consciously, I then went straight up to a +10. And this is what made me smoke that particular cigarette, is I imagined enjoying it. I imagined having a picture in my mind of me smoking, really giving me great feelings, great tastes, and making me feel great. And incidentally, it never did make me feel great. It never really did, but I always thought it was going to. And this is the thing with bad habits. Very often you think you get this compulsion, this urge, and you think that it's going to make you feel great, and then it doesn't. But you've got to do it, because we go through this process of applying all these internal representations, and it's anchored into our system. So how did I break this habit? Well, I realized, what would take me down to a 0 on this scale? What would I have to do in my mind's eye? And I thought, well, okay, so if I thought about the smell, if I thought about the smell of the cigarette on my clothes, that's horrible. I hate that. In fact, I hate the smell of anybody else smoking. So I could imagine that, and I'll, take it or leave it at that stage. What would take me down to a -5? Well, to take me down to a -5 on the scale, I'd have to imagine the taste of it on my breath and somebody else smelling that and being disgusted. And that's awful to me. I can't, the smell, ugh. And I've got a picture in mind of that now, which is really horrible. And then I thought, right, okay, to break this habit, what would take it down to a -10? And for me, it was, I imagine becoming ill as a result of smoking the cigarette, becoming ill, my arteries clogging up and becoming congested, and it giving me health problems. And I could imagine that and the impact on other people. And as a result of me being ill, and that I just couldn't imagine smoking as a result of thinking about that. And that's how I overcame smoking, and that's how you overcome a bad habit. So the next time I got the urge to smoke, because it did come, the urge to smoke, I got it, and I immediately switched the picture in my mind's eye to the thought of, no, this is going to be, I can imagine being ill. I can imagine what it's doing to my arteries, the smell, and it turned me off completely. The urge came a couple of times. I did this process, and then it was gone, and I never got it again in that particular way. And so that's how you break a bad habit. That's how you break a bad habit. So we're going to do this exercise then. So think and bring to mind your own bad habit. Think and bring to mind about your own bad habit. So what habit have you got that you'd like to change now? And so when you think about that particular habit and you think about the last time that you did it, when was it that you knew that you had to do it? When was it that you knew that you had to do it? What was the very first thing that happened so that you knew that you had to do that particular thing? What was the very first thing that happened so that you knew that you had to do it? What does that bring to mind for you? What picture does that create for you in your mind's eye? You get a picture now of that thing. And notice as you hold that picture in mind now, notice whereabouts on the scale of +10 to -10 that picture puts you. Thank you. Have you got a number? Thank you. So you're probably wanting to go ahead and do this habit now. So what would make it absolutely, necessary for you to go ahead and do that habit? What would you have to think about, and how would you have to change that picture that you've got in mind? And you can close your eyes in order to help you, if you like, to get this picture. What would you have to do to it in order to make it a +10 of I've got to go ahead and do it? What sort of sounds would you need to hear? Would you need to hear other people talking? What sort of feelings can you get in your picture about doing it? How would it make you feel if you did it? How are there any smells, any tastes? Are you saying anything to yourself as you go ahead and think about doing this particular habit and how good it'd be to do that? So think about what would need to happen for it to be a +10. Okay, thank you. Take a deep breath. Thank you. Clear the screen. Okay, and what I'd like you to think about now is, in order to not go ahead and do this, in order to think about breaking this habit, so what would take you down to a take it or leave it kind of attitude towards this habit? What would you have to think about? How would you have to change the picture in order for it to be, yeah, okay, I take it or leave it, can do it or not, my choice? What would have to happen? And just think about that thing now and bring that to mind. Thank you. And what would you need to do in order to take it down to a -5 on the scale of I've got to do this? I'd absolutely -5. I'm not going to do it. I'm absolutely not going to do it. So what would you need to think about? What would you need to hold in mind? Do that now. Thank you. Bring that to mind. And what would be -10? So this is, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't even think about doing it. The thought of doing it is, I just couldn't do it. I could never do it again. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so you've got that picture now in mind, and you can open your eyes now. Thank you, because you've got that picture and you know what you need to do. You know what you need to do. You know what you need, the picture that you need to bring to mind in order to remove that habit straight away from your consciousness. So you can break your automatic pilot of completing and doing the habit now. Once you notice you're getting the urge, you've got a picture in mind that you can use to break this particular habit. And that's how you break habits. That's how you break habits. So I'm just going to bring you back to me now. Okay. So hopefully you got some really good value out of doing that exercise. It's an exercise that you need to repeat. As I say, habits are created through repetition, and every time that you do that, every time you imagine that picture getting you to a -10, then you're going to create and anchor in some new internal representations that are going to be more empowering for you and are going to give you what you want rather than the habit that you don't want and that is gone now anyway. So I really hope that you've got some good value out of this. You can, of course, because of the wonders of technology, you can go back and rewind and replay any part of this particular webinar. Go back to the beginning if you want and play the whole webinar through. I hope that you've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, then please do go ahead and ask me the questions. On the next webinars, we're going to be looking at some specific things that we can use NLP and coaching for, and particularly NLP techniques to help people overcome trauma, to help people lose weight, to help people sell better, because NLP can help in that particular scenario as well. So we're going to look at those type of situations. But if you've got any questions on this particular webinar, then please do go ahead and ask any questions, and I'll answer them as they come through. Thanks ever so much for your time, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Bye for now.